of fund a few more programs, which is great. So we're always looking for folks to volunteer. We need people to set up and break down at programs. We also need people to volunteer at events that we do and that sort of stuff. Feel free to talk to any of us or get on our mailing list. Now I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up. So next month, October, we won't have a regular program. We will be having our annual fetish fair, which we haven't done in several years, and so we're really excited to bring it back. It's normally in August, but scheduling was an issue this year. So we're going to bring Aria. Aria has been doing the arrangement for us as kind of our events coordinator, and give you a little taste of what is going to happen at Fetish Fair and how it works.
Well, hello. And the Fetish Fair is going to take place on October 15th. It's going to be here from about 3:30 to 8, and then following that is the Year Up Play Party. But we'll be offering a little bit more interactive demonstrations and presentations by some of the experts in kink here in the Bay Area. Everything from flogging to therapeutic devices for kink to latex repair. And I'm actually have a couple of presenters actually here. Victor Zhao, he's going to be doing rope bondage. And then Flicker is going to be showing us a little bit of knife play. So that information will probably be coming out probably by the end of this weekend.
As soon as we get the email.
Yep, and so sign up as soon as you can, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
So that day has a billion things going on. The 15th is the rescheduled leather walk from the cultural district, so that'll be in the morning.
Leatherdistrict.org.
Leatherdistrict.org. It's also the Bdsm Street Fair, and it's our fetish fair, and then Europe will be hosting a play party after the fetish fair.
The Eagle's also having a flag raising that day as well.
Yeah, which went together with Leather Walk that got canceled because it rained and everybody was going to melt. So the fetish fair, just in case anybody has questions, ask anybody of us. It's all done in small class format, so you sign up for the classes that you want to take, and you get some good interaction with people who know what they're doing. So join us. November we will do kind of what we've been doing traditionally, which is we're going to do a traditional program on mental health, depression in the kink and nuns community, and that will be a different date. Normally we do the 4th Wednesday of every month, which is of course the night before Thanksgiving, so we will not be doing that. We will be doing it the week ahead of time. So keep an eye out for those details as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to our presenters and our guests for the rest of the program. Thanks.
All right, can I get our panelists up here, please? Come up and take a seat, and we've got a number of questions to ask our panelists. I want to put out a call for people to, would you be on a panel and talk about your experience, your lived experience with neurodiversity? We got a number of people, and these three here are fantastic and able to be here tonight and willing to share. I'm going to have them introduce themselves with the first question.
Can you share how you found out about your neurodiversity?
Yes, I will go first. Hi, I'm Victor. I think it's been a lifelong thing for me. When I was around 3, they did some tests in China. I had some issues because I was born with carbon monoxide poisoning, 2 months premature. My parents were poor and pregnant. And they did some brain studies and stuff, and wires. I scored as autistic. Back then, I think in China, the word for ADHD and Autism were on the same spectrum, and it was like only the hyperactivity part. And it seemed clear that I didn't fit that criteria, so my parents were like, okay, he's autistic, but maybe it's just related to developmental stuff. And then also, I also took an IQ test around that time, and it was pretty high. So I have a pretty different way of thinking about things than a lot of other people. Also like the classic anxiety, depression combo. I have some complex PTSD as well, which is just PTSD, but a bunch of little stuff that keeps on happening, and then it becomes a problem. So yeah, that's me.
Hello, Adam. Let's see, so for ADHD, it was diagnosed 20 years ago. And as far as being on the spectrum, that was 5 years ago.
Ogre. I was, I was diagnosed ADHD when I was 6, which was many years ago. And yeah, I'm in my 50s, so this was back in the 70s. I have never officially been diagnosed as autistic, but I have several friends who are, and when we all started talking, it was like, wait, I do that too. Wait, that's autism? What? So I talked to my therapist, who is not one of the ones who's qualified to do the test, but my therapist was like, yeah, that sounds like you may be on the spectrum. And then a later therapist said, yeah, I agree, you sound like you're on the spectrum. So I have just assumed that I'm on the spectrum.
I also want to specify that my diagnosis was a while ago. I tried to get one recently, and then I didn't quite exactly qualify. So I think what I experienced is maybe a little bit different.
It's also kind of weird as an adult to get diagnosed as being on the spectrum, because it can be expensive, and there's only a few people in the city who are qualified, and even then, from what I understand, it's fairly subjective.
It's symptoms based.
Yeah,
There
it's
is a
self-reported.
lumbar puncture you can do. There is now a genetic test for it.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, but it involves a lumbar puncture, which a lot of people don't want to go through.
Yes, I
That is what's also interesting about the genetic testing that can be done now, which is done with a cheek swab. And it won't give you as definitive, but what it does give you a lot. It will give the physician who's reading the information a lot of information around phenotypes and kind of medication relationships that you have to kind of how you metabolize certain medications and certain deficits that you have. So you're absolutely right over. The challenge here is that a lot of it is based on symptomatology and based on a whole series of questions that are asked that often will happen. Somebody will read it and say, oh, well, you don't qualify.
Yeah.
Which I think is really disappointing for a lot of people.
And you get to a certain age and you've learned so well to have coping skills where you have kind of submerged these symptoms, and you're like, oh, well, I don't do that anymore. Sure, as a kid,
Yeah.
not anymore.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for that.
You also have to do a lot of physical stuff. It's like ADHD. If you have sleep apnea, the symptoms for sleep apnea, you present as the same symptoms for ADHD.
yeah.
And if you give the stimulus drugs for sleep apnea, it's not going to squat. So in some ways, ADHD is kind of a diagnosis of elimination. Find all the stuff that it could be, but it's not.
All right, next question for our panel. When it comes to BDSM, how do you feel your experience differs from others?
Sure. And I'm going to interpret that as how does it differ from others who are not like on the spectrum, who are neurotypical.
Okay.
I would. So going off of what Richard was mentioning earlier about intense experiences and things that for me, one of the biggest problems is I have a great deal of trouble, not just with distraction, but with different sensory inputs causing me to have one or another overload at a time. In fact, anybody who's ever played with me will notice that I almost always close my eyes when I'm having sex, because it's just easier not to have that sensory input making it difficult for me. One of the things I love about BDSM is, please understand, I'm not much into pain, but I am very much into stimulus. So I absolutely love the fact that somebody can put a single stimulus and suddenly every single neuron in my brain is focused on that. And it is the most real, it's so weird because it's like, most people would say, oh, that's so stimulating. I'm like, no, it's the most relaxing feeling in the world because suddenly everything's quiet because there's only one thing I'm focused on, and I am so focused on it. It feels so amazing. So, I mean, I don't know if that's similar to anybody else's, but I think that that's probably different from neurotypical people's response.
Blindfolds your friend.
Well, you can't answer how it's different, because that logically doesn't make sense as a question. But I can say that for myself, I think that I gravitate towards kink because I like that. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. It's how. Can you say the question? Sorry. Sure.
How do you feel your experience is different from others? Or how have you been told your experience is different from others?
I think that during communicating online with people, I think that sometimes I take things too literally. I like to be able to discuss the scene, especially if they're sub, because for safety and other things like that. And sometimes I automatically assume that other people are going to take it as seriously. And sometimes I hear people say things like, I'm open to anything, or I'll try anything once, or try to not answer the questions and try to get you to talk. And it's no, I'm not talking because you need to talk to this, and to have more information. And so I guess that maybe there's times that I'm a little too formal about it, but when it comes to safety and connection and things like that, I don't want to take anything for granted or make assumptions. So I think that would be one thing that I can't say that it's different, but I've had to learn how to ask more open-ended questions, less direct. Instead of saying things like, why do you like ... saying things like, can you tell me what a good time looks like to you in an impact place, or things like that. And so the reason I'm saying that is because I know the answers to the things that I'm asking, as far as from my standpoint, but what I didn't know is that sometimes it's too intense for other people. So I gotta ask it in a more open way instead of so direct.
Yeah, I totally also echo that. I think a lot of people have told me about my recon profile. They're like, oh, you thought so much about what you like your animals. I just feel like it seems natural to kind of super analyze everything.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. I'm a very numbers-based guy, so I'm a huge fan of spreadsheets. When I can, I really would like to give people a form or something to fill out. That would be my preferred way of doing it. Luckily, I also took machine learning in college, so when people don't fill out the form, I'm totally fine just asking them questions and then kind of figuring out info based on that. It doesn't always work great. I kind of like to, specifically to the kink thing, I sometimes find it difficult to follow something that I don't really fully believe in. So as a sub, it can be really challenging for me as a switch to play with the dom that is newer, that I don't fully know yet. Especially if they say something and in my head I go, that's not factually correct, that logic seems wrong. It's a problem because my brain goes really fast. So it doesn't make sense for me to expect everyone to do things the way I like it. But I'm really good at what it can be. So I found that it's much easier to go to someone I'm sure I would be in school and I would turn to someone and say, hey, do you want to practice singing? Or like, hey, do you want to do this weird like knot braiding exercise that I came up with? But now I can go to the kink play party and say, hey, do you want to do some bondage? Do you want to do impact play? Do you want to do this other thing? And that helps too. I was also lucky enough to like do a little bit of like musical theater and singing and acting. So I think exploring that a little bit more professionally in college helps me create that kind of energy, you know, in the scene. So I think that influences the way I play, for sure.
I wanted to bring something else up, just going back to something, I think it was one of you two had asked about being a top with being ADHD, and you had touched on it, but it's. I don't talk very often. Anybody who knows me knows I'm like 90% bottom, but occasionally at a BDSM scene I will talk. I will, because I do enjoy dominating at times. And the reason that my executive dysfunction doesn't really kick in is because at that time I've gotten everything from the bottom that they want. I know what they want, and at that point I have made a plan of things to do to the bottom that they want. It is not my choices. I am doing their choices. And sorry, I don't mean to point my head. I have made a plan for their choices, and just like I could make out I could make a list of all the things I'm going to do in a day. It's just that, like, if this is for me, I'm very likely to be distracted from it. However, if it's for somebody else, that's different. That's something that I can do because that's like one series of tasks. So in your case, I know you like electro. If I were playing with you, I would definitely work with electro, and I would like build and then like give you time off, do more, that sort of thing. It's easy. It's not hard to be a top in that situation. I think it's harder to be a selfish top in that situation because then you're like, oh, what do I want? I can get to do everything. So what am I going to do?
I don't know because I sometimes suspect that my sir has a little ADHD, looking at the other places in his life, and I think that the way I would analyze his behavior is that if a problem is boredom or repetition, that one of the things that it can is that it's very exciting. It's a like compact, shiny experience play. Like it's very exciting. You're getting, I guess, the brain chemicals that make it engaging for somebody with attention issues, and then it's done. So I think the scene-based thing is super easy. The relationship thing, if you are the executive in the relationship and you have executive dysfunction over the course of a relationship, that can be a struggle. But certainly on a scene basis, it seems to me that it's a benefit as a top.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the tops, where I played with the top with ADHD, and he basically just said, pick the toys you want me to use, and I picked them all out, and then we played, and it was an amazing scene. But I'm sure if it was like, I get to choose, like the top that had to choose between the 70 different toys, it would have taken a long time.
Probably, yeah. Putting me in Mr. S and telling me, you can have any one toy.
Yeah, I like sort them. I'm like, he doesn't have that satisfied.
You seem to have a really good hierarchical mind. I do not have that hierarchical mind.
Cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, like which one's gonna be the most? Yeah, it would be spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets. It's amazing how many people with ADHD often have analytical jobs. So they are analysts, they are numbers people, they're spreadsheet people, they're engineers, right? It's incredibly, it's really common.
I think it's because we have to come up with ways to prioritize because we can't just naturally prioritize. It's like, okay, I have to pay rent and get this new video game. I really like the video game, but the rent means I don't go homeless.
Yeah.
Which one's more important? And literally your brain is not telling you which one is more important. Yeah, you have to come up with ways to convince your brain, let's not go out on the street today.
You know, I laugh about like how much of my practice is ADHD. My practice is immensely filled with ADHD, and since since we're here in the valley expanded, basically, right? With as many people who work in the tech industry, we have and also who are academics because of the number of schools. There's just a vast number of folks that are really out there just trying to live their lives, and it's interesting how often they're kind of working with therapists who don't understand what it is to work with individuals who are on the spectrum in some way, right? Or who misinterpret high sexuality with some sort of problematic problem, with some major problem, right? Whereas I see that as part of an expression of, a creative mind or an active mind, right? Or anxiety, right? Instead of looking at this as some sort of pathology down the pipe about this, right? And kink can be this place where people have a great playground to play with all these like active, exciting things in their minds to do.
So, next question for the panel. What strengths does your ADHD or autism give you? We've already alluded to a little bit, but let's ask it directly. What strengths?
I think it's really important to be honest, and so I try to be really direct. And I do have a template for people to fill out, some questions. I don't care if they think I'm dumb, so if they don't, that's not going to be that's. I'm asking them to talk about themselves, so they're not into that. That's fine. Bye. So I really like that because I like to take notes and so they're like impact player, they want to choke, or they want, everyone's like different things, and so I think it's really helpful for me to stay organized, and I'll literally dig through the entire recon message before we meet. I will read every last thing. And, I'm present, I'm sober, I'm there, and I think for me, wanting to do a good job or whatever, I think that's part of it. Also, trying to be compassionate towards other people. I definitely have been misunderstood in my life, or had people say what autism is. That's a perfect example, right? It's if anybody's confused about it, it's not your fault. All these things were lumped together. It's a spectrum, but people are what does that mean, So I think that it helps with trying to have compassion, try to see where people are coming from, try not to make assumptions. Let's see what else. I think that. I like that it's. I like that kink opens up the conversation to be more specific. I think that's really cool. I think that's something anybody can relate to. You really can ask for what it is that you want, or say the things that you don't want. And I think it opens up the opportunity, it just lights my brain up in so many ways, because I wish that this is the way that we could just talk in everyday life. Where we just cut through the bullshit and just say hey, what is it that you like, want me to spank me, or what do you want, just to be able to do that. You can't actually do that if you want to date, or sort of the traditional things. And so I like that you can sort things out. I think it works really well with my brain.
Sorry, I'm focused on first dates high. I'm a Gemini, I like cats and water sports.
Yes. But that we can do that, right? That's so cool. So I think that's really cool. If I think of anything else, I'll bring it up.
Could you repeat the question again?
Yes. What strengths does your autism or ADHD give you?
I'm still not too sure about those two, but I want to give a quick call out to depression and anxiety. being someone who suffered through that a lot, I think I had my first suicide ideation when I was about 7. And I think since from then until maybe about 23, it hasn't been a week or a month without like feeling like, you know. And I think one time I had like a sleepover call with a friend, and then I asked him, we were talking about stuff, and I realized that he wanted to wake up after he went to sleep, and that was just so crazy for me to hear, like, you want to live again tomorrow. That's so weird about you. Having experienced through that, I think it gives me a lot more compassion for people when they're going through something challenging, when people are anxious. I can understand what it means to feel like the world's crumbling around you. Even though I haven't, you know, been to war or had something super, I guess, traumatic happen, I think that kind of emotional relation really does give me a strength when I connect to people. I think more specific on the topic for autism and ADHD, I think it's pretty cool to have so many hobbies, have a bunch of hobbies. It's less doing everything at once and more like focusing on one thing, a crazy amount for 2 weeks and then switching. It really sucked, I think, when I was in middle school and I was bad at everything. But now I think I've gotten pretty good at some things. So it's really cool that I can connect them and relate them in conversation. I have a bunch of different things that I can go back and do if there's nothing I can do outside, like during COVID. So I think that's great.
Someone that you have what toys, they're like, oh yeah, that was in when I was on sewing, that was the woodwork.
Yeah, I have a sewing, like origami, you know. I just recently had to sew a 3D printer, that was the thing for it. Yeah, too many things.
We should take that ADHD like kiss possible.
That would be awesome.
So I think I bring 2 strengths specifically from being autistic and being ADHD. One, I respect the living hell out of rules. I think anybody who learns to live with autism and ADHD learns that it's not that we follow every rule, but if we understand why a rule exists, we will defend it to the death. Like, sure, I may go 70 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, but I'm going to fucking turn on my blinker every time I change lanes, and I will be the one who's screaming at you in front of me for not doing so. Because I understand that rule. The 55 is stupid, but so in a kink situation, I will respect the fuck out of yellow, red. I will, you know, if you told me I don't want you to do this, I will do everything in my power to make sure this doesn't happen. My alpha, for instance, hates being tickled. I love to tickle. I have never tickled him. No, never intentionally. I tickled him once accidentally, and I felt like the world's worst puppy in the world for having done so. But the other thing is, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people think that autistic people have low empathy. I even used to think that autistic people have low empathy, but having talked to a lot of autistic people, I think we're actually the other end.
Yeah.
Whether we naturally have empathy or whether trying to understand everybody around us, we developed a sense of empathy. I think we have an overdeveloped sense of empathy. If you say ow, I better know that that's a good ow. And I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to be like, we're good, right? Sometimes I've actually had problems telling me, you know, I'm going to scream occasionally. It's okay. And I'm like, all right, just, you know, I need to make sure that that's the good kind of scream. And I'm also going to try and understand exactly how you're feeling so that I can raise or lower the stakes, so to speak, with whatever sort of play we're doing, whether it's sensation, whether it's pain, whether it's humiliation, you know. And I think that's the other strength is bringing a sense of empathy, of compassion, of sympathy with the way that the other person is feeling and what the other person needs. Sometimes it works out that I have given people things that they need without them even realizing that that was what they wanted. Not outside consent, of course, but you know, doing things, stretching in different directions.
right, so we have one last prepared question, and then any questions you guys have, okay? So, how has the men's leather community treated you, or in particular treated your autism, ADHD, whatever, neurodivergence?
It's my turn to go first.
Sure. I guess we've all.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, because I knew this question was coming. I mean, it's not like they popped these on us by horrible surprise or anything, but one of the hardest things for me to deal with is the fact that I don't like secrets. I don't like people saying one thing but saying something else behind backs. I don't like, people saying, oh, X person is really a dick, and then to X person's face, oh, you're so wonderful. And I'm the one who will go forth and say, well, everybody thinks you're a dick. And of course, everybody, I know it's a mistake when I do it, and I still do it. So that tends to get me in trouble in the leather community. Fortunately, I'm not the type who's ever going to, run for Mr. Popularity. So, I'm hoping it's not going to turn around and bite me in the ass. But I mean, on a one-on-one, it's been very positive, honestly. I mean, I don't think I've ever had. It's amazing how easy it is to go up to somebody and in the leather community and say, I see that you're wearing purple. Does that mean you're actually into piercing or not? Because although I've never done it, I'm kind of interested. And you don't get a weird kind of, no, I just like purple. What's wrong with you, you freak? Which is actually more or less what we're used to getting, outside of the kink and leather community. But yeah, I mean, people are more accepting of you just coming up and saying what's on your mind. I think one-on-one in the leather community.
For me, I definitely got along well with people in the kink community. I'm not proud to say it, but I usually don't tell people I'm on the spectrum. I'm so tired of people thinking they know what it is. It's just complicated, and so a lot of times I don't tell people because I'm still coming to terms with, because it used to be called Asperger's, but now we can't say that anymore, so now I'm on the Autism Spectrum, and when I say that, people think I have an issue with learning, and I'm actually extremely intelligent, and so it's kind of, when you said it's not surprising that it's all lumped together, it's actually very surprising that it's all lumped together. It's extremely shocking, because the spectrum is a spectrum, and then within that is the spectrum as well. As far as people are verbal or not, are they, if they're overwhelmed, not going to read verbal, that's not my experience. I actually do hair for a living. I'm very functioning, but you're not even supposed to say that anymore. Yeah. So, it's very kind of okay, what the hell am I kind of thing. And so a lot of times I don't say it anymore because I think people are automatically wondering what assistance that I'm needing, or am I asking for accommodation, or they look at me with concern, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I've been running a business for 20 years on my own. I'm very capable, and so I will tell somebody after I've known them for a little while, so that way, in case they're like, why did you say something so blunt? Then they'll know. But or why is he so quirky? But yeah, in general, I think that I've gotten along pretty well. But in that regard, I usually kind of say less until I know somebody a little better, because unfortunately, with the limited information out there, people can't help but think about a movie that they saw, or their niece, or their nephew, or somebody that they, and so I kind of just keep it general, and I just say, oh yeah, I'm eccentric, or whatever, I just say it in more relatable terms. I'll say oh yeah, I'm a little shy, or whatever. So I actually just name it, I just take little pieces of it, and I just call it things that are more relatable.
I mean, I'm sorry to jump out in, I'm sorry, but I think it's totally understandable that there's a lot of things that form who we are throughout life that we don't necessarily tell somebody. I mean, I was adopted. I want everybody to say hi. I was adopted as a child because, like, the first thing is like, why is that important enough to tell me? You know, or you know, there's 100 things that change who we or develop who we are that we don't necessarily need to quit immediately tell everybody immediately. So
Yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah, it's just take case by case.
Yeah.
Because we were talking with the dude, like, I don't want to be your friend or have sex. Like, you know, the other part, sometimes both, yeah. Like, the other stuff comes later, I guess.
Yeah. So I've moved, I think every year since 2018, and well, sometimes multiple times. And I've had a lot of changes. So graduating college, and then and then COVID happened. So I've had to remake my core network of friends constantly. That's been pretty challenging, but I think I've gotten pretty good at it. Maybe it's kind of similar to networking, which I also worked on a lot in college to get a job. It was pretty hard, just actually in general, with like the fearless crowd or the general people around town. I'm not sure why. I think a lot of people have a really in tune sense to tell when someone's desperate or sad or whatever, and they try not to engage with that. I guess if you already have a lot of friends and then you see someone who's kind of, they don't really seem cool, then maybe you don't want to interact with them. But I think after a little bit, I figured it out, and the leather community was actually a lot more welcoming. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was after I bought a leather jacket. Maybe it was after I figured some more stuff out, and then started to connect with people more one-on-one, and then I met their friends, and then we were all having a good time, and it goes from there. But I think part of it is it's weird. Having such a different way of thinking of things, it can be weird and difficult to connect with people on different topics that maybe you don't really care about. A lot of things I really care about, other people don't care about. But yes, for some reason with the leather community, I feel a lot more welcome. So
One of the things I've noticed in the leather community, we have to have, just because of the sheer safety issues, a lot of things, there's a lot more recommendation kind of friend to friend.
Yeah,
As opposed to just random stuff.
I do remember, like, I think my second party at one of the Europe parties, gosh, I forget who I said it to, but somebody asked me, what are you into? And I was like, well, I like this, and I'm kind of into guys who are into silicone. They're like, oh, I have the perfect person. They immediately dragged me up to this guy, and they're like, this guy loves silicone. And it's like, well, my dance card is full tonight, but, and the next thing I know, I have a date with this guy, like a couple of days. So yeah, I mean, there is that with the leather community, that especially, that there is a nice interconnectivity if you're willing to, so yeah.
I think what people are willing to do a little bit more for each other.
Yeah.
We have time for like 1 or 2 questions.
I have a question that we spoke about earlier, so
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that I asked it. So we've talked about strengths, but I wonder if any of you have things that you think are, that you are extra cautious about, or the concerns, pitfalls that you have either when you're negotiating for play or in relationships because of your ADHD or autism. I know I do myself, and that's why we had talked about it.
So having said to answer this for one thing that really comes to mind is oftentimes I say things without thinking, or maybe I'm a little bit too blunt. I think you mentioned this before too, over that I'll say things without coding them. I got a lot of flack for this in high school, got a lot of flack for this in college. At work so far it's going okay, actually. But I've also lost a bunch of friendships by speaking a little bit too clearly without thinking, without figuring out what it sounds like. Some of my friends love me for it. Some other people are no longer my friends for it. So, I
Oh, I think for me, try to take conversations with a grain of salt online. And, you know, I often forget that people drink alcohol at night. And then that's
All kinds of people do.
and so
Yeah.
sometimes I'll like write a message like middle day to sort of say there's a difference. And there's a lot of discrepancies in the page. In the novel, sorry. But there's a lot of discrepancies, and so just try to take things with a grain of salt. And you know, sometimes people are drinking, they're in a little mood, and they're feeling bold, and they say something. But so I just try to be mindful of that. That you know, not everybody's treating it like a job. Like I just want to do a good job. And like just try to remember not to make it about me, because I think this way. This is what the other person is thinking. It's like, you know, that's a human, right? So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me, is to just try to make sure that I take a step outside myself and look at things objectively, not just that I'm excited to meet them or, you know, other things like that. So just try to stay sorted out and know what my liabilities are, and organization is one of them. And so I take notes and sort of jot that down. So, yeah.
I think I'm absolutely on the same page as Victor. I will just blurt out things and not. Sometimes I won't even understand later what it was that made somebody unhappy with something I've said. I've been, and people have thought that I'm all sorts of isms and ists because I've said something without any sort of negative thought associated to it, and people will be like, "You can't say that. What did I say? What did I say? I don't understand." I'm like, "No, you can't say that." And I'm not saying that I've said particularly awful things, but like I will tell somebody. I never can think of examples when I'm like
I mean, there's a time when you mentioned to me, like we were sitting around talking, and you said, I said something about whatever, and you said, well, I only like cock, so it was about transness, and I was like, what the hell? And it was, I now know in context that it was completely innocent on your part, that you were expressing a shared preference for cock.
I have absolutely.
And I was like, yeah, I got that too.
And not meant anything more than just, you know, innocent. Exactly.
Yeah,
Literally what I
it's a
said.
moment to understand what it means.
But if any sort of subtext is assigned to it, then it obviously becomes horrible. And I'm like, I didn't put the subtext on it. How would you?
Yeah.
So I will tell anybody who's dealing with somebody on the spectrum, we're bad at subtext. We're not only bad at reading it, we're bad at giving it. If we tell you X, we mean X, and we probably have nothing else but X when we said that. If I tell you, you know, I like your beard, that doesn't mean that I didn't like the way you looked before you had the beard. I just mean your beard looks good.
I think, John, there's also the flip side of, like, I am one of those kinds of people on the spectrum who is obsessed with the subtext, who is every word, every conversation is a text for me to attempt to figure out what did you mean, what did I miss, what did I not understand, and for me, one of the difficulties I get into is that if there is a person who is more neurotypical, who is my partner, who is my sir or something, and that person is interpreting the world for me, then if they abuse that, if they misinterpret the world for me, if they tell me subtext or they tell me what the world means in a way that's to their advantage to fuck with me, I may not notice, and I have gotten myself into situations where I was with a partner who was interpreting the world for me in a way that I internalized as, oh, obviously that's true, and it wasn't, but I couldn't understand, I couldn't read the text the way they were, which may be one of the reasons I'm obsessed with it. You know, if the world is this intense text with footnotes, I'm like, I want the footnotes, I want, you know, I'm missing the index, I'm missing the footnotes, can we have that part, please? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm afraid we are at time. I want, please help me thank the panel.
thank you two for giving your time. It was a great program, thanks. I have one final ask of everybody, and that's for chairs being put away. So Rascal is gonna be the chair, Pied Piper tonight. And if you would pick them up, fold them up, then